Meet our free U.S. tax preparation course brought to you by the Borderless Accountants. Now, on its first month, we are inviting you to join our community. Live training, reputable tax firms as resource speakers, recorded, replayable at higit sa lahat, libre. To join, like and follow our official Facebook page, join our Facebook group for important updates, and fill out our Google form to be included in our mailing list. See you there!
And we'll continue today with our session on the W-2. So yesterday we've covered boxes 1 to 6, and we've also explained to you guys the Social Security limitations and information about what is Social Security withholding for, what's the rate, as well as the Medicare tax, right? That's what we covered. And we also did cover the federal tax withholding on box 2. And what are the things to watch out for when entering the numbers into the tax software. Okay, we've also demonstrated that into the actual software, right? So for those who missed that live session, that means you were not here yesterday, no worries, because you can always go back to the yesterday's recording. Okay, so you didn't actually, if you didn't watch it, you missed a lot, right? Because that was like the most critical information on a W-2. And again, I just want to emphasize that because W-2 is the most common tax form for a 1040 return, all right? So we will now continue with watching the walkthrough that I lifted from YouTube, and then as or like the usual, I will emphasize some key points as we go along. All right. And again, if you got questions, just type it in the chat box, and whenever we have the opportunity, I will address those questions or comments. Okay. So let me just share my screen again. Yeah, maulan dyan. Dito din actually, maulan din. A couple of hours. Pero di na masyado malamig. Alrighty, so let's watch this video. You guys see my screen, right? If you don't, just let me know. And then I don't remember exactly where we stopped yesterday, but it's only a 10-minute video, so.
Rate of 1.45%, which is split again between you and your employer for a total of 2.9%. Now, once you get through those, you're going to get to sections 7 and 8, and these are Social Security tips as well as allocated tips. Now, if you don't work a job where you earn tips, you can skip right past these boxes because there shouldn't be anything in there. On your tip amount, and you are responsible per the IRS's guidelines to accurately report the total amount of tips that you have. And then once you enter that information, once you actually go and file your taxes, you're going to be able to pay not just your federal income tax, but as well as those FICA taxes that I mentioned earlier, which you have not already paid because your employer is not withholding those taxes on your behalf throughout the calendar year. And then moving ahead, box 9 is empty. I'm anticipating this is going to be used for future use if the IRS figures out something else to use for it. 10 is going to be dependent care benefits. These are going to be things like childcare that is provided from your business to you on your behalf. Again, I wouldn't imagine that most people have something to put in this box, so you can just skip on down to 11, which is going to be non-qualified plans. And there is a nice description on the next page that I'm going to hit in just a moment that walks you through exactly what a non-qualified plan is considered to be. And then going from 11 into 12A, B, C, and D. And these are going to be various letter codes that are going to be associated with various contributions that you might have had throughout the calendar year. So for this one, a double A in the amount of $5,200. This means John Smith contributed $5,200 from the tax year 2022 towards his eligible Roth 401k. And then another way of indicating that is going to be in box 13, where it says that yes, this was part of your retirement plan contribution. Now for boxes 12A through D, you could have multiple codes, and I'm going to cover that in just a moment when we get to that instructions page. Now for box 14, that is going to be other, and those are going to be for other entitlements or other deductions that the employer needs to indicate on your W-2. Now going from there into step 15, this is going to be the state where you reside, where you're going to be paying state income tax. Or in the case of this one, where I use Texas, there is no state income tax, but the employer might still be based out of that state. So for this one, again, I just generated an arbitrary number. And so the EIN for this state is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if you do live in a state that does collect an income tax, as well as a locality or a county that collects a local income tax, this information is going to be reflected here. And this is information that you could potentially use to deduct how much you actually owe on your federal income taxes, because you did already pay some taxes at both the state and local level already.
All right. Repeat, go back, because some probably was able to hear the audio, didn't realize it was too low. So let me just replay it, and then we probably need the captions.
Tips as well as allocated tips. Now, other half for a total of 12.4%. And then for the Medicare tax withheld, this is taxed at a rate of 1.45%, which is split again between you and your employer for a total of 2.9%. Now, one tips as well as allocated tips. Now, if you don't work a job where you earn tips, you can skip right past these boxes because there shouldn't be anything in there. And the reason we have these boxes is because compared to a regular salary or an hourly income, your employer does not withhold taxes based on your tip amount. And you are responsible, per the IRS's guidelines, to accurately report the total amount of tips that you have. And then once you enter that information, once you actually go and file your taxes, you're going to be able to pay not just your federal income tax, but as well as those FICA taxes that I mentioned earlier, which you have not already paid because your employer is not withholding those taxes on your behalf throughout the calendar year. And then moving ahead, box 9 is empty. I'm anticipating this is going to be used for future use if the IRS figures out something else to use for it. 10 is going to be dependent care benefits. These are going to be things like childcare that is provided from your business to you on your behalf. Again, I wouldn't imagine that most people have something to put in this box, so you can just skip on down to 11, which is going to be non-qualified plans. And there is a nice description on the next page that I'm going to hit in just a moment that walks you through exactly what a non-qualified plan is considered to be. And then going from 11 into 12A, B, C, and D. And these are going to be various letter codes that are going to be associated with various contributions that you might have had throughout the calendar year. So for this one, a double A in the amount of $5,200. This means John Smith contributed $5,200 from the tax year 2022 towards his eligible Roth 401k. And then another way of indicating that is going to be in box 13, where it says that yes, this was part of your retirement plan contribution. Now for boxes 12A through D, you could have multiple codes, and I'm going to cover that in just a moment when we get to that instructions page. Now for box 14, that is going to be other, and those are going to be for other entitlements or other deductions that the employer needs to indicate on your W-2. Now going from there into step 15, this is going to be the state where you reside, where you're going to be paying state income tax. Or in the case of this one, where I use Texas, there is no state income tax, but the employer might still be based out of that state. So for this one, again, I just generated an arbitrary number. And so the EIN for this state is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if you do live in a state that does collect an income tax, as well as a locality, say a county that collects a local income tax, this information is going to be reflected here. And this is information that you could potentially use to deduct how much you actually owe on your federal income taxes, because you did already pay some taxes at both the state and local level already. Now, moving from this page, we're going to continue on down here, and a lot of this is actually just replicated throughout this form, and all the information is going to be same on all of these PDF fillable forms. So continuing down here, we're going to get to the notice to employee, and it talks about when you do and when you do not have to file. There's more complete instructions on the actual IRS form 1040, and that's going to be the general tax form that everybody fills out for their personal income taxes. Now, continuing on down here to some more instructions that I think are a little bit more useful. Again, a replication of the actual W-2. So here's going to be some instructions for the employee, and this lists out nicely what each of these actual boxes actually means. So it goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through 14, and then it tells you, hey, in box 12, what is some information that could be listed in here, and exactly what do those different codes mean. Now, continuing back on here, it's going to give another generation of the W-2, and then we're going to get to some more instructions for the employee. And this is where it's going to tell you what do all of these different things that could be in box 12 actually mean, as well as some instructions for box 13 and box 14. Some of the more common things that you might see on here would be like the double A that I had up earlier, and that's going to be a designated Roth contributions under a 401k plan. Or if you work for a different employer and you have a 403b plan, you could expect to see a double B. Now, these are all codes that I'm talking from some of my friends. You might not necessarily know what they are, but they are all listed here. So if you see a code, make sure it makes sense to you and the sort of pay and also benefits that you received from the previous tax year. So this is a nice section right here. And then just finishing out what the W-2 has, it's going to have some instructions for employers at the very bottom of here. And it just basically says when you're required to furnish the W-2 to both the IRS and your employees, as well as some other tax deadlines that your employer needs to worry about, not necessarily something that you need to be worried about. Now, what should you do if the W-2 that you receive is wrong, or you just flat out never receive one from your employer in the first place? Well, the first step for what you should do is just basically on the lowest level, go and talk to your employer, whether that's through a finance department or for an HR department. Go and talk to them, let them know the issue that you didn't receive a W-2, or if you did and it was incorrect, specifically what on there that you noticed was incorrect, so that way they can generate you.
All right, let me just pause on this because I feel like this is very important to miss. Now, I may forget this when we deep dive into a W-2. So there are cases wherein you would be encountering tax returns you need to file for previous years. Like, the taxpayer hasn't filed any tax return for quite a while, and now they come to you or the firm that you're working for, and they need your help. And they'd say, oh, it's been a long time. I wasn't, I lost a W-2 that my employer has furnished me with, right? So there are options. They can call that employer and then get them another copy, right? But if they say, yeah, I no longer have contacts from that employer, but that employer goes out of business, so there's no one to talk to. That's no problem because they can always get that from the IRS website, right? So they can log on to the IRS website and create an account if they don't have one yet. And then it's going to ask for some security questions. And from there, they can lift out their wage and income transcript. Okay, so in the wage and income transcript, it's going to detail all the W-2s that were issued to that employee, including any other tax documents. It could be a 1099, it could be a broker statement, everything that an employer or a business issued an income document to that taxpayer for will be in the tax transcript. Okay, again, it's called a wage and income transcript that the taxpayer can pull out from the IRS website. So it's not a showstopper. Again, I've encountered several instances where a taxpayer, is kind of lazy and makes your, but there are ways, right? There are ways wherein you can still continue to prepare the tax return because the information will be in the IRS database. Because again, remember that any W-2, any 1099 is not just provided to the taxpayer, but a separate copy is always sent to the IRS. And another thing that was mentioned in the video is the deadline, right? So there is a deadline for a W-2, for the employer to provide a W-2 to its employees, right? And what I know is it's January 31st, right? So January 31st is the deadline. You can verify this online, but that's what I know. And what does that mean to you? So after January 31, that's really gonna be the tax busy season, right? Because by then, W-2 income earners would have already their documents, and then the returns are ready, right? Because the tax season, it does not, for example, we're talking about the 25. It's not going to start on the first week of January itself, right? Because normally the IRS e-filing system, they close it for maintenance and whatever else that they need to do with their e-filing system. But they close it sometime on like the third week of November and up until the third week of January. So there's like 2 months, and it's not like a specific date that they communicate, but they announce it as they get closer to the closing date, right? So what does it mean when the IRS e-filing system? That means you cannot file a tax return, right? So, and then you would ask, if the tax filing deadline is September 15 extended for business and October 15 extended for personal, why would there be a need to file December or early January? There are cases like that wherein a client come and they need to file, right? But then you will have to tell that client that the IRS e-filing system is closed during this period. So we may need if you now you can do paper filing. That means again, the return is filed to the IRS or mailed to the IRS office. And there are only 2 IRS centers, one in Utah, and then I think the other one in Missouri. So those are only 2 IRS centers. It's unlike ours, right? We have the RDO for I think at least one per province. But the IRS, there's only 2. Also because there's no need to go to an IRS office, guys. So so they mail that, depends on where they are located. If they're located on the West Coast, they will mostly be mailing that to Utah. If they're on the East Coast, then they'll probably be mailing that to the Missouri. So yeah, that's if they insist on filing the return during the time that the IRS is closed. Or you can also tell them that we'll wait. We can wait until the IRS opens again on the third week of January. So what does it mean? Again, the busy season starts typically third week of January when the IRS opens, because that time W-2s would have already been issued, right? So may mga employers naman are very efficient in terms of providing W-2s to their employees. Like as soon as the calendar year closes, the W-2s are already available, because employers don't really use internal payroll services, or at least that's what I know. But they use software or a payroll provider, just ADP, QuickBooks, ADP. So these companies are very efficient. So again, as soon as the year ends, W-2s could be downloaded straight away from the software, right? So, but then even if your clients or the taxpayers that you're working their taxes for are, already have the W-2, you can prepare the return already, but you cannot e-file that return until the third week of January, or at least when the IRS e-filing system opens. Right. So again, remember there is a deadline as to when the W-2 is issued. And that also is very applicable to those who are working as bookkeepers. So yeah, be mindful with that, because if your bookkeeping clients have W-2 employees, be mindful that the W-2s need to be issued by the deadline, because otherwise there's a huge penalty for late provision of W-2 to employees. Right, so let's see you have
A
questions.
W-2 corrected or W-2C. Now, if that doesn't really get you anywhere, by the end of February, you don't either have your up-to-date W-2C or the initial W-2 that you never received, you might want to consider filing a complaint with the IRS to be able to get the process moving so you can actually get your W-2 and be able to file your taxes on time. Now, there's two different avenues that the IRS provides to be able to reach out to them. One is through an in-person appointment at an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, TAC, or you can try calling the IRS over the phone. And the number for that is going to be 1-800-829-1040. Now, if still nothing has happened after you even talked to your employer, you filed a complaint with the IRS, they've reached out to your employer on your behalf, and you still don't have a W-2, you're still required to file your taxes by the tax deadline of that specific year. For this year, for 2022, you must file your taxes by Monday, April 18th, 2023. But even though you don't have a W-2, you still have to file your taxes anyway. Now, in that situation, you might need to turn and use IRS Form 4852. What this form does is it effectively allows you to estimate what your actual W-2 information should have been by using your most recent pay stub. So it's going to be estimating what was your total pay for the previous year, how much money was withheld.
All right. So what he means by this is that the employer is very inefficient, right? So the employer was not able to issue a W-2 at all. So not to the employee and not to the IRS. So the wage and income transcript would not work. It's again, there was no W-2 to begin with, right? So in that case, then this is the option that the employee can do, so he be able to file his tax return timely. The question, does this happen? In my 5 years of experience, this has never happened, right? This has never happened because again, most employers are well aware of the responsibility. If they have a W-2 employee, even if it's themselves via an S corp, they subscribe to a payroll provider, so that they don't have to worry about how much they deduct in terms of withholding, how much they deduct in terms of Social Security withholding and Medicare. That's taken care of, because if you're a small business, you cannot afford to hire a full-time HR or a payroll officer, right? So that's why they do hire contractors like Gust or payroll providers such as Gusto to do that for them, and they pay a monthly subscription. So yeah, point of the matter is that it rarely happens, but there is an option for the taxpayer.
Held for both your federal income taxes as well as your FICA taxes and any of the other information from the box 1 through 14 or Alpha through Foxtrot that we already mentioned. Now, the downside to using this alternate IRS form as compared to W-2 is because a lot of the information is estimates on your part. The IRS does readily admit that it is going to take longer for your actual tax return to be processed, which means that if a refund is due to you, it's going to be severely delayed compared to if your employer had done their job in the first place and timeframe that they're required to per the IRS. But once you do have your IRS Form W-2 or 4852 that you filed out, you still have to actually file your taxes. But I don't think there's any reason for anybody to actually have to pay their taxes unless they have a really complicated tax situation. And that's why I recommend that everybody check out the IRS Free File program to see if they qualify to be able to file
Nakwento ko na to most of the tax software are not free, right? So with their TurboTax, or they do self e-filing, may bayad pa rin yun. I think minimum that you pay is like $100 for a 1040. But there are options for the taxpayers who want to self e-file and not pay a tax software. So that file-free software provided by the IRS, but there are qualifications, right? Not everybody qualify. For one, the qualification is the income threshold, right? So you have to have like a certain income for you to qualify. If you reach that threshold, then you wouldn't qualify. You have to pay because apparently you can. If you're curious where he lifted those instructions, you can go to just Google. Not sure if I'm sharing my screen entirely. Let me unshare and then reshare. So again, if you're curious where to get that W2 instruction and including all the codes for box 12, you can Google that. So W2 instruction part 2. And I'm not sure what's going on. My internet today, or the internet of this hotel, is kind of slow. Takes a while for the document to load. Right, so this is a very detailed instruction of W2 and W3. We'll not cover W3, that's another thing. But if you're a reader and you're curious, you can go through this. This is pretty intense. But question, are you required to? Not really. You don't need to. You can use Perplexity. It's more condensed and summarized, right? So, but again, I'm just showing this for you for reference, okay? And actually, before I forget, we are 51 in the room. That's still a lot of people. We want to take photos first because others will have to leave like at 10 or at 9. So just for today's probably social media content, if we all can share our videos to see our lovely faces, yung mga antok dyan. Ako din ay kakagising ko lang literally, like ang sarap ng tulog, sarap hindi gumising, but I have commitment, right? This is a commitment. I have to get up and like 10 minutes before 9. This works, right? So who can do the honor? Nito Masimas Trophy, or Janelle, or Kelly. You can do the honor. I don't know if it's just me. Again, my internet. I'm not seeing everybody's faces. So maybe at the count of 3, mag-smile kayo or mag-pose or whatever you feel like doing. All right, Kelly or Jade or Miss Chelsea, you know the drill. All right, 1, 2, 3, pay mais. All right, I guess that's enough, no? Para masulit natin yung time. We'll stick to 9:30 today. Because I have other stuff to do today. Right, so thanks for showing your lovely faces. Let us continue. This is actually an actual W2 for a client, so I need to mask the sensitive information. And if you happen to see, I have to be careful, and I can see that there's may iba pang hindi ko na mask. Bakit pa naman kasi ito yung W2 niya ay naka-display yung entire niyang SSN. Merong ganun na mga W2 or payroll provider na naka-display yung entire social. But most I see are naka-mask. Paano yung naka-mask? So, kailan naman to kasi last 4 lang. Right, you guys see my screen, right? So if may nakita kayo, i-alert niyo ka para ma-hide natin. I really don't want to compromise the information of the client. Right. So this is a W-2, slightly different from what the content provider of that video material that we just watched. Because again, each payroll provider has different form, but the contents are the same. So in this case, the payroll provider for this client is ADP. And so this is how ADP structures their W-2. So we've covered the box 1, box 2, 3, 4, up to 6. One thing you notice here, ito yung question yesterday before we ended. Paano pag mas maliit yung nasa box 1 versus sa box 3 and 5? So this is an example. As you can see, box 1 is 102,000, whereas the Social Security and Medicare withholding basis is 111,828.28. Right? In this case, tingnan nyo lang yung nasa box 12, box D, specifically this amount, 9,268.64. Right? I-add nyo yan sa 102,559.64. That's gonna total 111,828. What does that mean? This employee contributed to a 401k, right? And that 401k, like what I mentioned yesterday, is a tax. It's a tax deferred plan, right? So whatever amount that was contributed, that's not in excess of the ceiling, is tax free, right? So when it's tax free, it's not used as the basis for the withholding. So whatever withholding that the employer took from the taxpayer's pay, that excluded this amount, right? And this amount was the employer's contribution. Iba pa yung this is the employee's contribution. Iba pa yung employer's contribution, right? Kasi again, pag 401k, it's a match contribution. What else do you need to know? Yeah, so if again, kung high earner si taxpayer, and it may be brought up during the tax review, and the taxpayer would ask you how he or she can minimize his taxes. This is one area that you can look at. Na-maximize ni ba itong 401k? And kung magkano yung maximum limitation for a 401k contribution, research nyo na lang. Okay? Kasi iba-iba yung limit for a single payer and married. Okay? And nag-iba-iba din siya every year. But I've encountered a couple of cases where it could be used as a tax advice, which will be effective for the following year, right? Kasi hindi nyo na pwedeng i-backtrack to na, dapat pala na-contribute siya ng, let's say, 16,000. However, 9,000 lang yung kinontribute niya for the year. Hindi na pwedeng i-retroactive yun. Okay, so moving forward na lang. Sabihin nyo na for 2026, for example, kasi yung next nating tax year is 2025 na. So for 2026, you can tell your client who is a taxpayer to maximize his or her contribution to his or her 401k. So mas mababa yung babayaran niya. Because again, will be deducted from his taxable income, right? So lumababa yung base for the tax withholding. Yun. I hope you're getting it. Yeah, makes sense. So now we go to box 7 and 8. these are for social, these are for tips. So in the US, uso yung tips, right? So kahit na bumili ka lang ng kape sa Starbucks, yung terminal ng kanilang uh, uh, credit card payment or Apple Pay, it's gonna show an option for you to give a tip. Kahit sa grocery store or kahit sa yung mga convenience store, meron pa din na prompt lang naman siya. You're not required to give a tip, but you can skip it. But it's a cultural thing in the US. Usually though sa mga restaurants, medyo nakakaya hindi magbigay ng tip, lalo na maganda naman yung service ng waiter. So yun, like personally, I provide tips kapag sa restaurant. That's why I rarely eat restaurant because it really is expensive. And the minimum tip that, unless you pay in cash, the minimum that they take is 18%. Diba? So kung yung bill 18% yung magiging so okay. Yeah, so that's box 7 and 8. I have not encountered in all honesty a tax return I prepared for na may tip yung employee. Kasi I have never actually prepared a tax return for someone who works at at a job na uso yung tip, like a waiter, for example. Yeah, for a store cashier. Usually yung mga client natin ay mga professional, so walang tip. In these my tips, it's gonna show up here, and the reason for that is employer, once they give the tip to the employee, they do not withhold any tax. They do not withhold any Social Security and Medicare holding. So, and they provide the W-2 to the employee na yung bahala bayad ng tax ng tip na yun, including the FICA taxes, right? And then box 9, it's graded out as what the previous video said. This is only for feature provision of the IRS. It's a benefit from the employer, so independent care benefits. Truly, yung family-oriented na mga provide sila. But I also see very few taxpayers na merong sa box 10. 11 non-qualified plans. I don't know what that is. You can research on that. I also have not seen any W-2 na may amount yung box 11. Box 12, this is very important, not to miss, right? So there are so many codes there, but in this example, meron siyang apat, right? So C, D, W, D, D. So I'm only just highlight yung D at saka W. Yung D, again, that's for the retirement account. And that relates to box 13. If nakita niyo yung box 13, naka-indicate doon yung retirement plans, naka-X. It's because that box D there on box 12 is a retirement plan. So that indicates that this employee contributed to a retirement plan. Anong repercussion kapag hindi ito nakamark appropriately yung box 13, hindi nilagyan ng X sa tax software? Kasi marami ding tax preparer na nakakamiss nito. Yung box 13, kahit may fill out or may naka-fill out yung box 13 sa W2, hindi nilalagay ng tax preparer sa tax. So anong implication nito? Yung box D, baka hindi ma-deduct, right? May ibang software on the box 13 to be properly filled out. If hindi to naka mark yung there could be an issue in terms of the computation of the withholding yung sa tax. So the tax due or the tax refund may not be properly calculated. Although some or most software will provide you a diagnostic, may prompt doon na box D or box 12 with a code D was marked on the return, but box 13 was marked was left empty. So that helps you correct any error or go back to any missed items. And W2 naman is HSA. HSA, that means si employer ay nag-contribute sa medical plan ni employee, right? So I think ang W is also a deduction sa box 1. Compute natin tong ano niya. So 10, 102,559.64 yung kanyang box 1 plus 9268.64. 111828.28. Bakit hindi nag-withhold yung 1,000? So dapat 1,000 is also deductible on box 1. It could be because hindi si employer yung nag-contribute nito or baka si employee ang nag-contribute kasi pwedeng si employer yung mag-provide depende sa benefit ni employee in the contract na part of your contract or part of your remuneration package is that sagot namin yung HSA account mo, kami magko-contribute. And then there's also a ceiling on how much you can contribute kasi nga, di ba, may tax implication siya. So hindi unlimited amount yung i-contribute mo at unlimited din yung maging deduction sa income mo. May ceiling yan. I think 8,000 plus 8,600 for a family. Tapos half of that kung single. So, tingnan niyo na lang sa W2 instruction or i-research niyo na lang. So what does it mean? Pag ganito na W tapos may code W tapos hindi nakadeduct dito, what you need to do as a tax preparer, although automatic naman to, i-guide kayo ng software na ay may code W pero walang or kailangan mo mag-fill out ng form 899 if I'm not mistaken for the software to exclude this from the tax calculation. All right. So, and another thing you need to know kung may HSA si client or si taxpayer and kasi ano siya para siyang retirement account din na you can withdraw from that, right? At kung nag-withdraw ka dapat for it not to be taxable, hindi ka ma-charge ng penalty, it should be health related, right? Like if ever hospital or there's a medical emergency, then you can withdraw from the HSA fund, right? And then pag nag-withdraw si taxpayer, yung provider nung plan will provide the taxpayer the form form for HSA 1099 or SA 1099. Let's do that. SA 1099. Yeah, this one. All right, now let's do an image. Yeah. So pag nakita niyo itong form na to, it's a 1099 SA. This is a gross distribution from these type of health accounts, right? Ang pinaka-common dito is HSA. So pag nakalagay yan, box 5, HSA, and usually ang nakalagay lang naman dito is may amount sa box 1. I'm sharing this now because this is also one of the most common prepare commit na pag may ganito hindi kino-confirm if the amount was used for medical purposes, right? And hindi rin in-indicate sa tax software. Kasi kung ganun, whatever was the gross distribution will be taxable and ma-assess ng penalty si taxpayer. So once you see this thing, you need to confirm with the client or the taxpayer if the entire amount was used for medical purposes. And in that case, it indicates a taxpayer that amount was used for medical purposes para hindi siya na-tax. We will demonstrate that, maybe not today or let's say tomorrow. Please remind me. We will look for a 1099 SA document and we can play around how this works kapag we miss out on the indicator that amount was used for medical purposes, right? Anong repercussion niya sa tax due or tax refund ni taxpayer. Okay, remind less than 20 minutes. So where was I here? So that's for box 12. Again, there are so many codes. Box C, I will not cover that because I don't know what it is as well. Box DD, this is I think related to medical as well, but it's not deductible on the taxable income. So again, search nyo lang what those codes mean, because there are just so, right? Share ko lang sa inyo yung most common and that one that I also know very well. Then box 13, again, this relates to whether the employee was a statutory employee, where there was a contribution to a retirement plan, or was there a third-party sick pay. So cover natin shortly yung statutory employee. This is in between ng W2 employee and contractor. So hybrid. Diba? Pag employee ka, the employer withholds taxes and also pays for the FICA taxes, right? Contractor ka naman, which you will get a 1099 NEC instead of a W2, is that yung relationship mo ka employer is just purely contractor, right? So the employer pay you, salary or, what is that? There's my payment say employer say, but the employer will not withhold any taxes because you will be responsible in paying your taxes towards the end of the year. And there was also going to be no FICA. Okay. So, and it happens a lot. No, may mga ganun na arrangement kasi it really saves money sa part ni employer, right? Kasi wala na siyang babayarang benefits. But statutory is a mix, right? So, yung statutory, walang withholding tax, right? Walang withholding, hindi nag-withhold sa employer. However, nagka-contribute siya doon sa Social Security and Medicare, which is otherwise known as FICA, right? So, walang withholding pero may FICA taxes. Yun yung example I know of a statutory employee is yung mga truck drivers. Yung like mga long haul na transport goods, they can consider or they're considered as statutory employees. And then itong box na retirement plan, we already know that it relates to box 12. And third party sick pay naman, W2 siya, pero wala siyang, ang nakalagay lang doon is like box 1. And then all the rest are empty. And then ang nakalagay lang dito sa box 13 is this is a third party sick pay. Right, so this is just an indicator for the tax software to calculate the right amount of tax. Okay. And box 14 naman, some of these are purely informational and some of the software actually walang provision for these codes. But if there are states who are really particular with box or the items on box 14, and one of that is New York. No, so kung New York yung client, which is in this case possible na New York din to, no, New Jersey pala. Hanapin niyo na lang doon sa tax software kung meron bang code na FLI, drop down, and then ilagay niyo yung amount beside that. Pag wala, ilagay sa others. Pag wala talaga, then wala, pwede mong hindi i-input, right? So it's not a big deal. For some state, they don't really matter. But again, there are states that require correct entry for whatever that's in box 14 on the W2. And then last part of the W2 is box 15 all the way to box 20. Ito naman yung state withholding, right? So as you can see, usually, kung ano yung nasa box 1, yun na rin yung nasa box 16, usually, or most of the time. But I don't know, for some reason, itong New Jersey, magkaiba, no? So I think in terms of the retirement plan, it does not allow full deduction, right? Kasi tingnan mo to, 102 yung nasa box 1, yung nasa box 16, 107. That means mas mataas yung basis ng state withholding tax New Jersey as opposed to the federal, or as opposed to what the IRS assess the taxpayer. So it is very important. Yung ibang tax software, nagdi-default sila. So kung ano yung box 1, default entry is box 16, the same din. And that's why you need to be careful. Pag natingnan nyo, the same yung in-input ni tax software, you need to overwrite it. You need to correct it. Kasi mali yun, di ba? So, you need to be careful. Kasi pag yun, kunyari ito, hindi kayo naging careful, ito yung in-enter ng tax software, hindi niyo ginamit ng 107, ang mangyayari niyan is there could be a possibility na magka-tax rate. So I may not have covered this in the past, but may dalawang tax jurisdiction, at least yung taxpayer. Yung IRS, which is the federal, at iba pa yung sa state. The state also has tax due and tax refund. Mag-i-issue nila at taxpayers. So again, point ko lang is be very careful with this box, because this also is a basis in calculating the state income tax. Okay? So in our example, kung instead of 107 ay 102, malamang sa malamang magkaka-tax refund si client kasi itong income tax na inassess sa kanya was based on a 107 na amount. Right? And then some of the cases meron ding local withholding tax. Usually kapag yung client ay based sa New York, no? New York City, other than New York State, also assess local taxes. So, ganun ka lala kapag tumirap sa New York, right? So, New York, and I'm not sure if California does, but most of those W2 documents that I saw are from New York. NYC usually yung nakalagay dito sa locality name. So yun. I don't know if we have time. We only have 9 minutes. I think we may need to do the entry tomorrow. So tomorrow, diretso na tayo sa data entry ng W2. We will use this as an example. We'll play around with HSA. What else? There's one thing that tomorrow, then remind me to show you or one exercise for a taxpayer by multiple state, right? I think I mentioned ko na yan before na there is a possibility na yung W2 ay multiple pages. Pag multiple pages yung W2 nyo, pag open nyo sa document, like, tingnan ba, ito 2 pages lang. Pag scroll down mo ganyan, 2 lang. May cases na 5 pages, 6, and careful with that. No, pag nagpe-prepare tayo ng return, we must always look at the source document from top to bottom, right? Like meaning we need to scroll down the way to the bottom. Kasi baka may information dun sa baba na hindi natin na-cover because W2 lang to. I only need the first page. No. Because there could be cases na multiple state taxpayer. Paano nangyari yan? One classic example is employee is working in New York but living in Jersey. Na-mention ko na yan before. Malamang sa malamang dalawang state yun. So NJ and NJ resident and NY non-resident. So pagka-scroll down yun ganyan, either multiple pages yung W2 or dalawang W2 yung iproprovide niya sa'yo. Dalawang W2 pero same employer, box 15, instead of NJ yung nakalagay, NY, right? So pagka ganun yung case, you have to make sure na may dalawang state return yung i-prepare mo. Okay? Kasi pag hindi ka thorough, pag-review niya ng tax pro, makikita niya agad na mali yung return or may kulang sa return na pinipare mo kasi kulang ng isang state. Okay? So we'll cover that tomorrow, again, in the interest of time. I think we'll need to spend the next 6 minutes for questions, clarification. And yeah, it's important that we cover W2 very intensively. Again, because I cannot emphasize it enough that this is very common, right? And do you need to, fully retain what we've covered in the past 2 days on W2? Not necessarily. Ng tax preparer na kakasimula pa lang. But again, mas maganda na yung alam nyo kung ano yung nilalaman ng W2, the theories up behind, right? But when I started, di ko din alam tong box D, box C, box W. Ini-input ko lang yan. Basta parang N3 work nga lang yung ginagawa ko. And I was doing that for a few months until, it slowly makes sense as I go along. Meeting service is about to end. For items that may talk to the employer's finance or HR. I get there. AI. All right, my question here, guys. We only have 5 minutes, and we'll continue again tomorrow. Okay. If my W2 po yung dependents or i-input din po ba sa return? Dito na good question, Jade. Dito na ipapasok yung income threshold ni dependent, right? So kung si dependent ay need mag-file return, then he has to file a separate tax return, right? Kung hindi naman, hindi siya required mag-file ng W2, hindi mo need i-input yan sa tax return ni parents, okay? Ang need lang na income document ng dependent, the input sa parents return is yung subject for kiddie tax, which is the unearned income. Hindi W2 yun. It's 1099. So but to answer your question, yung W2 ni dependent, hindi na siya i-input sa return ng parents or whoever ang nag-claim sa kanya as dependent. By the way, Jade is working for me, and you can ask her, right? She was doing tax preparation for me. Walang background at all. I just showed her paano i-input yung mga W2 without explaining to her ano yung mga nasa W2, right? But she just learned on the fly. But now that's why I asked her to join this session. This is the right opportunity for her to learn the principle behind the W2 numbers, boxes, and codes. Right? Who else? My question, my comment, guys, I like questions. So, and I kind of feel bad pag walang questions. Like, I have to be honest with you. I feel bad pag walang question kasi alam to ng mga previous students ko. Dalawa lang yun eh. Kung wala kayong question, either naintindihan niyo lahat or wala kayong naintindihan at all. Diba? 5.60 computation for box 1 amount. Anong example ba tong number na nilagay? Probably yung nasa YouTube. Computation for box 1 amount. Kasi hindi ko makita yung 4305.60 dito sa nakashare sa screen. Maybe the example in the YouTube yung nasa
That is a concern. Kaning wages, tips, other compensation, box 1 of W2. Right, portion.
Is it on my screen?
Yes, sir. Sa
Um,
akon siya, other cafe, 125.
Okay. So 4305, hindi mo na naman need yan i-input. But let me see, 116, ano mga numbers ito? Gross pay. Okay, mga deductions na yan ni taxpayer. Tingnan nyo, yung gross pay niya was 116,093. Pero yung ni-report sa W2 as taxable income was only 102,559.64. So, you will get to know this. May mga sa section na credits and deductions sa GLIME na material. We will cover some of these. Yung CAFE 125. These are employee benefits na hindi subject for taxes, right? And my qualification see IRS on that. Good spot, no? Although this one, kaya nakaligtaan ko din to kasi we don't really look at this anymore. These ones, they don't matter for tax preparation purposes. Ang tinitingnan lang talaga natin dito is yung year, yung information, yung boxes 1 all the way to box 20. All the rest that's nandito, hindi na siya natin concern because this is just, I would say, informational kung paanong na-arrive yung computation ng taxable wage ni employee. So, consider that as itong 40, itong 401k, itong other cafe as either taxable deduction or non-taxable deduction. All right, to come up with the the net wage. But good spot. That means isa kang taong thorough, Carlo. Okay, kita mo pa yan eh. Maybe one of the reasons why box 1 could be lower than box 3 and box 5. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be lower kasi nga diba tingnan niyo itong 12. Box 12 meron na siyang contribution to 1K. Also here, itong 9268. If you look at that, that's the same as in box 12 nung Vita. I lost my train of thought. But whatever you see here, the 9268 is also the same thing. That's what's in the box 12. Pero yung 4305, hindi siya kasali sa Social Security basis. So itong 102,559 plus 9268 lang. Hindi nakasali itong 40.76 na GTL at CAFE 125 na 4305. So that means these two are really non-taxable item na benefit ni employee. All right, we're 2 minutes over our time. So employer is from another state. So you file your return. Kaya multiple state tayo, right? So if yung employer ni taxpayer requires a state tax return as well, then you will have to file a state tax return for that state, right? But generally, kung saan nakatira si employee, that's where we file a state tax return. But again, not all, kasi hindi naman lahat ng state nagre-require ng state taxes. Wait, one sec. Oh, but I'll have another one. Yeah. Patapos na ako. All right, guys. So yeah, emphasize ko lang to. If kunyari, nakatira sa Texas si employee, right? So walang state tax return si employee kasi Texas or Florida walang mga state tax returns. However, the employer niya is like Facebook, for example, or Meta na nasa California. So non-resident return. Okay? Although sa kanyang tinitirahan, wala siyang state, right? So yun. I hope na answer ko yung question ni Sir Rolando. Okay, bukas po maaari po niyo po bang mapakita sa tax return saan nilalagay yung KD tax sa ProConnect. KD tax is automatic yan nagko-compute, no? May specific provision, but remind me please, Ms. Menda, to look it up. May form tayong fill out specific to that, kung magkano yung, and then the software should automatically compute how much is the KD tax. Right. Yung 401k pwede year. Yes, provided nagawa niya within the tax year. Right? So kausapin niya lang yung HR niya for him or her. Kasi annual naman yung tinitingnan ni IRS. All right, sige po, Sir Chris. Thank you. All right. We are 5 minutes. I love question, I don't mind. And I appreciate those 48 people who are still here, up late on a Tuesday night or Tuesday. All right, guys, that's it for today. And productive. And tomorrow we'll start looking at inputting W2 tax software, diba? So W2 na tayo. Exciting. And we'll provide you copies of the W2 as well that you can practice and you can follow along when you do the review. Alrighty, guys. Yun lang. So again, I would request everybody to, kung hindi pa kayo naka-follow, like and share our post or page, Borderless Accountant, please do so. Spread the word out there para mas dumami tayo. All right, guys. So again, that's it for today. See you guys again tomorrow. You have a good night.
Meet our free U.S. tax preparation course brought to you by the Borderless Accountants. Now, on its first month, we are inviting you to join our community. Live training, reputable tax firms as resource speakers, recorded, replayable at higit sa lahat, libre. To join, like and follow our official Facebook page, join our Facebook group for important updates, and fill out our Google form to be included in our mailing list. See you there!